as Beast Mode. It's going to be WEZ Evo, and then of course DPAC, who is our current leaders out here. Vroon now to the front there from Zeeson as they come underneath the banner. They will not be seeing that again. They're going to be heading on over toward the 5 sprints and then toward Libby Hill. As you had said, it's going to be all about the sprinters out there tonight. I do think that DPAC may be one of the favored teams out here. Maybe going to have a little bit. I mean, we could see some of the other teams hunting down some points. Beast Mode are going to have their work cut out for them, though, I think today. Be having the reality of James Bevan, Sam Lindsay, a couple of names that definitely come to mind that are going to be on Beast Mode's mind as well to be following. Diavola also has an amazing sprint. I've actually sprinted with him a couple of times in the last couple of months here. Very difficult rider to deal with. And I think maybe not one of their, I would say, all-stars for the final sprint, but somebody could pick up points in the midway in order to really solidify the team at the top.
Yeah, it's a very interesting sprint field, to be honest. And I wouldn't surprise me if the teams from early on do quite organised lead-outs for these intermediate sprint points, because they can all definitely add up. James Bevan has put out some of the most incredible numbers we've seen all season. Sam Lindsay has been one of the most impressive riders all season, but on a purely flat course, we would expect that he's not necessarily the name to watch. But Beast Mode, I mean, they've got some big engines in there, so that'll be, I think they've got a big opportunity today.
Yeah, they're going to have to really play their cards right, set things up, follow wheels correctly, I think, and take full advantage. Now, you will see in the kits, just to name out some of the teams here, DPAC Elite, as you can see, they're going to be in the yellow and black with a little bit with the white on the back there. We can see James Bevan there right in the bottom of the screen. Beast Mode is going to be riding around in the orange kits. We'll see if we can grab a couple of those riders to give you an idea. But Seb, Beast Mode there on the right-hand side with the German flag, as you can see, riding in the orange. Z-Sun, obviously, in their usual kit there with the white and the big Z on the back. WTRL, bright yellow and black. Neon yellow, actually, a little bit, I would say. And then Cryogen with the blue. WEZ on the far left there with that blue and orange stripe right down the middle. So those are some of the jerseys to be watching out for in the sprints. Also, no pins R3R on the right-hand side, as you can see, with the red and light blue. So a lot of times we do depend a lot on the riders nearby list as well as the names over the top of the avatars, but it always helps to get an idea of what the jerseys look like and be able to get some identification around each one of them.
And not just for us, but also for the riders, because in that split moment where somebody attacks or jumps early in a sprint, it is really handy if you can have a bit of an idea of at least which team may be doing it and may be moving, because it gives you the chance to be the first mover and certainly the first attacker. I feel like there's a little bit of cat and mouse going on already before this first sprint, because this first sprint, Nathan, it'll give away a little bit. It will really show who's got the legs and who's out there to give it a crack.
It's a great point, and I think that James Bevan is going to be a man to be watching out for, and I think the question that's going to be answered in this first sprint is whether or not Bevan is saving everything for that final climb, or if they're going to be using Bevan in the initial sprints through the flat sections. That is going to answer a lot for the DPAC team and who is doing what for them on the day. Now, I am getting word that Sam Lindsay is not in the race out here today for DPAC. So that is going to throw a wrench into their plans, I would think. In Beast Mode, they have a door to open here of opportunity right now in order to take back some points with only a 2-point difference out here today. Beast Mode crew, they have all of a huge opportunity in front of them today out on Richmond.
Hold on. If Sam Lindsay isn't there, is that why Anna's not with us tonight? Did she call Kid flat because her favourite Kiwi couldn't line up? I think I'll have to investigate that a little bit further. That is interesting. I think that he has played such an incredible role over the last few weeks in particular, that it wouldn't be a bad week to give him a little bit of a rest, because they may really need that horsepower for that final TTT next week, depending on whether Beast Mode can claw back any points. It looks to me as the sprint opens up that distinctive orange of beast mode is right up there and moving. And look at that sea of orange in power and sea of orange in jersey here. They're going to be over the top. Holy moly! Was that James Bevan who did that?
No,
That was
Campagnoni, actually, the
Campagnoni,
Italian
my
rider.
Woo.
That was, I mean, is this a newer rider? You're coming in from DPAC? That name is not one that I'm extremely familiar with, but what a kick coming from the Italian rider. We'll see if we can bring in some of that replay here and how that ended up playing out here, because that was absolutely flying.
We remember, though, at the end of season 1, all of a sudden names were popping up on teams that we didn't recognize, and we were like, hey, where did they come from? And it was almost like a little bit of politics started being played and team movements started happening before the potential playoffs. So remembering that we've got another week of kind of normal season, and then we do have a dedicated weekend of playoffs. So, maybe they're giving him a bit of a trial, and wasn't that a successful one, because that was a very good sprint. He's a 16 watts per kilo for 15-second kind of sprinter, but the acceleration there, that was, wow. He didn't just keep them on the line. Didn't he fly past the rest of the crew? It looked to me actually like DPAC were giving a pretty good lead out, and he just rocketed.
The timing was so incredibly perfect too, Kate. I mean, that had to be perfectly timed to come through at just the right time. Last 200-meter type sprint. Nice little kick there. DPAC showing that, they've shown up to race out here today. It's definitely not a week off for them.
No, it certainly isn't a week off. Beast Mode did a good job. They would have accrued potentially more points in that sprint overall, because it does go quite deep. Top 10, which is a good start for them. I'd say that a bit of a pattern that we've seen so far, we're in week 7 now of this season with Beast Mode, and they really did explode into this season with a big bang, is that the first half of the race, they're often very dominant and they really put themselves out there. The second half of the race is where DPAC muscle over the top a little bit and pull that back. So it's pretty early to be kind of making too many assumptions of what may happen, but we have seen a few kind of throwdowns go out, and a bit of an indicator of what may go on. James Bevan, he didn't do a lot, which kind of shows me a bit of a team tactic there. He still went over the line in the top 10, but he didn't have to waste too much energy to do it, so that's pretty smart of him.
Yeah, I have a feeling. I thought I saw Bevan under some orange numbers. I thought he was going to be coming through a little bit, later in the sprint, similar to what I saw from Campagnoni. But I have a feeling that, as just what you just said, he did just show his cards a little bit. Watch out for Bevan in the final sprint. We did see something very similar in the men's premier division. Freddie Ovitt, one of the best sprinters, obviously, is all-rounder rider. I mean, he seems to be able to just do anything when it comes to Zwift racing, but I think Bevan, very similar in the kind of sprint that he can throw down to what we see from Ovitt and those kinds of speeds. It is going to favor Bevan if he can hang on through the first half of that climb for that final sprint. But being the type of rider that Bevan is, I think he has to reserve something through the front end of this race and follow wheels, allow the rest of his teammates to take down some sprints for him, so he has every last ounce of effort to get across line in first place.
The week that impressed me the most with James Bevan was when they were in Innsbruck, and he's not known for his long climbing necessarily, as we've talked about how powerful he is in the sprint, but he went over the leg breaker, the little pinch in Innsbruck course, with such incredible powers, and he went over on occasions, and that's where we really had to sit up and pay attention and go, wow, this guy is a lot more than just a pure sprinter. And I actually think that the Libby Hill after party course suits him to a T, because he did struggle a little bit up that climb in Innsbruck, which many riders do. Even some of the climbers find that one pretty difficult because it is a half an hour climb. But he's a 1200 watt per 15-second kind of rider. And the reason that I
1200 for
think tonight,
15 seconds, Kate.
yeah,
Like,
it's
think about,
amazing.
I mean, I try and hit
I say
1200
it
as
so
just max
casually.
wattage. Like, that's all I care. Like, can I see 1200 for just a moment? And he's doing it for a full
Yeah.
15 seconds. Like, what is the max power? I think we saw 23
I know,
watts per
yeah.
kilogram or something like that when we were on Innsbruck Ring when he was going for a couple of those sprints.
Yeah, that's exactly right, because that 15-second power is an 18-watt average for 15 seconds. It's when we break it down to what we could potentially see today, the thing that is most telling to me is not necessarily the watts per kg, but just the raw power, because it is flat. And for these intermediate sprints, that will count more. When we do go up Libby Hill, those watts per kg will come into it a little bit more. But in saying that, James Bevan, he's on the top of the chart for both raw wattage and watts per kg, because he packs a punch for a slighter built rider. Isn't that everybody's dream? Actually, I really think it is in terms of watts per kg. Look at this, Nathan. They're lining up for the sprint again. All of these power-ups are being dropped early. They're positioning. They're starting to hit out. Everything, it's a sea of orange here on the right. Beast mode, they are active, but it's Jones from DPAC, followed hot on the heels by Ranker from Beast mode. It looked to me like Beast mode actually came across the line maybe in second, third, fourth and fifth. So we have two quite competing scenarios and strategies here. DPAC have now very impressively won with two separate riders, but Beast Mode is sort of stacking that front to collect some more points, Nathan.
Yeah, you do see a sea of orange behind the riders that seem to be the dedicated riders. DPAC have shown up with a plan, because I did see that the Italian rider Caponati was just hanging out. They went ahead and they threw Jones at the front. Ranker, as you did say, Persky, as you can see, Zils. Pacheco, they're rounding out the top 5. So they still got some points here. But Beast Mode, they're playing correctly to the team situation rather than just trying to take the all-out win with a single rider. And that might end up playing into their hands here to take the win on the day, since it is a team competition. The team with the most points at the end of the day, not first across the line, is going to be the ones that take the win most likely. As we do see with Heino on the ladies' side of things in the Premier Division, also seeing consistency with Canon Esports and the men's side of things. Freddie Oven might be dominating the Premier Division, but that does not mean that they are the top team, because Canon Esports is more consistent with their top 10, top 5s. As we just saw with Beast Mode here in this sprint, perhaps they're saying, no, just make sure we follow the wheels correctly here, have enough sprinters at the front end, bring the power across all the riders, across the team, grab as many points as we can, and that might end up playing very well into their hands here. So now the other thing I'm noticing is it's DPAC and Beast Mode at the front here, ZWC, Cryogen, not too involved in these sprints, maybe sitting back and watching for the first two. We still have 3 sprints to go. Or are they just a level above these top 2 teams?
Well, I think there's an element where they're watching each other's back a bit. And, to their credit, that is because both of the teams have been quite dominant in an overall fashion. We've seen some real flashes of brilliance from the other teams throughout the series. But for the most part, the aggressors and who's been controlling the race have definitely been DPAC and Beast Mode. In many ways, I think at this point in the season, it's very easy for the other teams to almost sit back and go, all right, guys, well, you've done this all season. We'll let you, race your race early on, and almost save themselves for that Libby Hill climb and save their legs when it matters a little bit more. Bearing in mind that it is about overall points. Yes, it is not just about who wins, but there is a little bit of pride and ego in taking that individual win overall. So it's definitely something that the teams will be looking to do, even if they're not in contention to go into that playoff, to step up, or even to feature in that top 3 overall for the season.
We do have the women heading toward their final climbs here, and we do have a situation that are playing out. We did miss this break situation, but Look at this. A rider, one of your favorites here coming from Arrow. Jen Petnin off the front. And on a break, solo at this point. We were not expecting this to happen. Butterworth busy here trying to chase things down. Unable to do so, it looks like, but able to get away from Z-Sun. And that looks to be the plan. Grace Smith being forced to the front. And Arrow just able to sit in. I mean, this is the perfect situation for Team Arrow up against Z-Thunderstruck.
Yeah, this is plum position, isn't it? And this is what happens when you outnumber them. Jen Petnin, we know she's one of those kind of diesel engines where if she gets going, she's very hard to bring back. But far more to the point is Zed's son are kind of out of options to bring her back because they've still got 4 Aero riders sitting on them. If they do use all of their energy to bring Petnin back, the only thing that will happen is then Butterworth will go, Bemrose will go. It will become an Aero show, absolutely. Grace Smith and Danette Shaw are very good sprinters, and it is dangerous to come to the finish with either of them. Aero knew, even though they had the numerical advantage, that they had to get rid of the sprinters, and they've done exactly that. A very good job of making that happen. So they're not far off the finish now, and Aero have kind of tied a knot around this one, I think.
Yeah, the top 2 spots. The only thing that's still in the back pocket here for Z-Sun, I mean, and I don't think it's going to take down the win out here today. Now, with the reality of the way that the points do structure at the end of the day, Z-Sun's still going to have that solid lead. But the win out here today is going to be going to Arrow, and it's always good, on a single day of racing. That's how things, really play out across the series, and a nice win here for Arrow. It's always fun to have a win on the day, and they've definitely made that happen. Now, what still, though, Danette Shaw and Grace can pull off here, having Jen Pettin and Butterworth off the front, being probably the strongest riders amongst that Arrow team, they could take the fastest for the segment still over the top of Libby Hill, which would be nice for their team. But Arrow dominating at this point. Garland with a little bit of attack, though. I can see in the rider list nearby McKay as well, so they may not be allowing Grace or Shaw too much leeway out here today, as we still watch Jen Pettin, looks like, take on the cobbles over the top of Libby Hill.
Oh, this is a beautiful moment to be able to hit these cobbles and go up at your own pace. We can see that KOM banner not too far ahead. There are some steep sections here, but Petnin has this wrapped up all in a bow. She has done an excellent job of pulling this off. Butterworth 40 seconds behind now, and it looks to me on that list like Danette Shaw is actually on the chase, trying to bridge that back, seeing if Zedsun can get somewhere on the podium. And look at that, it is a lonely day for Shaw and Grace Smith. They are outnumbered, but that gap is closing to Butterworth. She's in sight, and they may actually be able to jump across. Jen Petnin takes the win, and what an incredible ride from her and the team today. Now, this is interesting. Look at this gap closing here. Danette Shaw bridging across, in fact, leaving the other Aero girls in their wake and really making the most of everything. She, even with that feather power up, Nathan, that just shows exactly how much power Danette Shaw has in her legs, even if she's outnumbered.
They close that gap down to Butterworth so incredibly quickly here, and it goes to show when you go off the front, if you do not have any power left in the legs, how quickly on a climb like this, it can just get shut down. Bemrose now looking to come across for third. It is going to be Butterworth trying to hang on, but her teammates come over the top there with McKay at 7.1. It's going to be Clark and Butterworth across the line for 6th place. That's the situation here for the women's A category. We'll jump in with the B's in just a moment here. Back in with the men as we look to find the images there for the B's. A category men here coming around for their, I believe it's going to be 4th lap here in just a moment. We'll double check here as we were away from the images just a moment ago. Any breaks is going to be the question, whether or not they starting to happen here. We do have Fowler off the back here, Arrow Masters as well. Stefanelli, a name I was not expecting to see off the back. So, although we are in a situation where it is fairly flat, it is dangerous out there with a little bit of inattentiveness.
It's interesting, isn't it, to see that DPAC have won those intermediate sprints, but with different riders. James Bevan sitting on the back, that just oozes confidence to me. There's really only two reasons you sit at the back of a bunch, and one is because you don't have the legs to sit at the front. The other one is because you feel so good that you're just sitting there biding your time and you're not nervous about what may happen at the front of the bunch. So that, to me, is a real sign of confidence. Obviously, on paper, given those incredible numbers we chatted about earlier, that 1200 plus watts for 15 seconds, we know he's more than capable on a Libby Hill style climb of succeeding. But, you know, they are not always on the best days with their numbers, and so we kind of have to take them with a bit of a grain of salt. But this show, to me, hanging out at the back, says to me that Bevan's looking good, and Beast Mode want to pay attention to that. We've got the bees, the lady bees over here now. They've just hit that the bottom of that KOM, which is a little bit of a misnomer because it doesn't look too nasty here. When they hit the cobbles, Nathan, that's when it really starts in earnest. For anybody who's got that training, that setting on their training, their bikes will start to shake a little bit and tell them that it's really happening.
Yeah, initially it is a wind-up, really, when it comes to this climb. The initial attacks at the bottom of the climb, unless you really have some confidence to try and give it a go for a full minute, you really just follow wheels. You ramp it up. I mean, you do start hitting into the high VO2 max at this moment, but it isn't usually into the high orange numbers. It's the second section here into the cobbles when the attacks really start to go. The initial, though, here from Kong, they do get a gap. They just let him go. Waterhouse is the only one to follow here. It does look like Kong's going to be just walking away with this one. 5.3 watts per kilogram. Waterhouse trying to come across. She might be able to do so. She's got 6.2 watts per kilogram. Has Kong gone too early is going to be the question. Where's the power-ups? Do they have none at this point, Kate? There it is. Another power-up, and that might be the nail in the coffin.
I think it's a sweaty finger struggling to find that button and drop that power up when it's needed. Lam Kong, one of the more dynamic riders in this field, but this is going to come all the way to the line here because Waterhouse is really pushing her for it. Can she come up beside her and push it all the way to the line? They're out of their seat, Nathan. And
Lam Kong takes it.
That one, but what a great finish.
That was so great to watch. That was super, super exciting. Between the bees, I'm loving the competition within the women bees category there. Very awesome to see the top two coming across the line. The men now jumping on over. Lots of action, everybody. I know we're jumping around a lot. We'll jump into the women's C's here in a moment. We'll try and catch, though, this next sprint coming on through for the men. Back in with Bevan. The question is he going to go for a single one of these sprints? You do see on the left-hand side of the screen there just a moment ago, that is the sprint marker that they're going to be looking forward to. 180-degree turn in just a moment, and things are going to start wrapping up into this next sprint. And Bevan has not touched the front. 180 beats per minute here, Kate. That's a high heart rate for Bevan.
He's a high heart rate kind of rider from what I have noticed. The first few times I remember thinking, oh, he's in trouble, but it's a bit of a misnomer, I think. I feel good for Bevan. I think he's probably biding his time a little bit at the back. They're moving pretty quick. Let's not take that away. They're up at around nearly 50k now. Luke McKenzie, we've got here. He's actually got a pretty handy watts per kg 15-second sprint. He averages over 1,000 watts for that. He's a lifetime kind of bike rider, has been an IRL racer for a long time, a lot of experience. Chris Hatz, he is also a very sharp and sassy sprinter. But DPAC, look at this. They are coming again. Devola just missing out there. Green taking the win. But once again, another DPAC rider up there and taking points, but it's almost a sea of orange at the front there. Nathan, look at all of these beast mode riders taking points.
This was actually a very interesting lead up. The Z-Sun rider went to the front and was just like, I don't even care. I'm just going to lead everybody out. I was extremely impressed by this. I mean, he just held on to the line. This is not something you usually see from a rider leading out and saying, I just don't even care. 13 watt per kilogram all the way through Evola. Nobody could come around regardless of the draft or the power up. So amazing kicks here coming on through from the Z-Sun Pro Cycling Sip CMI rider here. So now I'm wondering, now the name in there, S Green. Looking at this, it is a Z-Sun kit though, so maybe just a different tag coming on through. Or green. Does have the UCI Pro jersey, so interesting to see. I'm gonna do some background investigation here, Kate, to figure out what's happening with this rider here that's riding for Z-Sun.
Deep dive into Simeon Green and see what we can find out about him. It's almost quite chilling, I think, to see what Beast Mode are doing this evening. If you recall, on that after party race up to Innsbruck, Heidemann almost bridged the entire gap on the slightly flat part of the climb. He just jumped across groups in the middle. Now, it cooked his legs and he wasn't able to then stay with Lindsay for the rest of that climb. But that was one of the moments within the race that really stood out to me, like, wow, this guy has got some really serious horsepower. If they can get organised into a good lead out, then I actually think that they've got some pretty big cards to play at the end. Hats looks pretty good on paper in terms of that. Ranker is another one. Again, if they can get 5 of them in a line, Nathan, they'll be pretty tough to beat. DPAC, we've seen that they've got a lot of options tonight and a lot of options with pretty good legs. This might be time for a Z-Sun rider, perhaps one of the Evo riders to maybe kind of sneak in. Abe is one of the Evo riders we haven't seen so far. All right, let's take a look at this, because fastest through segment is a very interesting one, and Campagnoni has taken that thus far. So the DPAC riders, and also some good point earning there from Ben Jones. So we were talking about the fact that perhaps Beast Mode were really coming out on top strategically, but when we dial that back a little bit and look at faster through segment, it actually tells quite a different story, doesn't it? So that's interesting. Zilsa from Beast Mode, Perska from Beast Mode, Seb, Ranker, Christopher Hatz, they've got 5 in the top 10, but DPAC have 4 in the top 10 with Campagnoni, Jones, Devola and James Bevan there as well, sneaking in a few points. So it is a bit of a race of 2 teams at the moment, but Simeon Green, what have we found out about him? He's thrown a bit of a cat amongst the pigeons with the performance in that last sprint.
Yeah, what an amazing ride here coming with him. 28 points, though, is all it's... I mean, DPAC have really racked up some points here. That's no joke when it comes to how many... 101 points so far for DPAC for fastest across the line and fastest segment times so far. 35. And Mateo, that rider, that first time through with the amount of speed he came with, that was all about fastest through that segment there. Because you saw the speed he came with from way back in the pack, and it's all about a timing thing, because you do get a lot through the draft of the pack as well, using every one of those wheels and that huge kick from him. I'm not sure we're going to see him at the front end of the pack again, because it might have been just about that 35 points here, Kate, and it's going to pay off, it looks like, for DPAC Elite.
Well, that is very smart. We discussed that perhaps Beast Mode were killing it in that regard. Isn't that interesting that visually it looks so different to what then comes through on that leaderboard? I think it's a good example of how the teams need to paddle their own canoe, so to speak, and not just get caught up in sprinting against the other riders and who crosses the line first, but definitely goes in with a very robust strategy. We know for Beast Mode that has been stack that top 5, top 10 with as many riders as you can, and very clearly with quite an opposed strategy, DPAC appear to have been going for those fastest through segments.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is the strategy out here today, because, I mean, you do see Beast Mode with 25 points. They are stacking that top 10 for sure, but DPAC Elite, plenty of riders in there as well, and walking away with Mateo and Ben Jones. Walking into the next sprint out here today, Simon Green, as we were talking about here, the only information I've really got, he rides for CMI in real life for the UCI team. It looks like level 30 Zwifter, riding for CMI Pro Cycling. Zistan in game here, and the only thing I got is if time is money, then I'm phenomenally wealthy. So he's got plenty of time on his hands. Is the only tagline that I have coming from him. He's also got some pretty good times through these fastest segment. Not sure if he's the richest out here yet today. He's gonna have to challenge Matteo, the Italian, at this point. The man coming out of Guam here. But here we go in the final 200. It's going to be Ranker here leading it out. Barry from WTRL. But no, it's going to be Stefanelli trying to prove me wrong. But here comes Heidemann. 13 watts per kilogram. Aero power up. Ranker, his teammate, coming on through. Look at the... Is that going to be a cryogen rider trying to make a move here as well with an aero power up? Will we see a counter over the top? This will be the laps. We may see riders to try and give it a go, as it is only about, I believe, 8K to the finish line.
Wow, there was Heidemann. We spoke about him in relation to the incredible ride that he had in Innsbruck, albeit he did not end up on a results sheet in a particularly notable place. But I remember that almost bridge across, and I remember looking at the power and thinking, boy, this is the kind of rider that you swipe your highlighter across on a start list. As a danger man. I think he will be very dangerous going up Libby Hill. The other thing I think, Nathan, is that it doesn't really matter who you've got highlighted on your start list. When it comes to Libby Hill, the involved, they have to really make their plan, and they really need to stick to it, because you can do a lot of damage by going too early, by trying to jump with something that goes too early. Or by letting something go, waiting too late, and then not being able to make it up on that cobbled section. The minute they start ticking up, this is going to get harder. Pachicho, he's struggling a bit off the back, so hopefully he will come back on. What's happened there?
Yeah, I think what happened is Deepak saw that Bevan was off the back. We didn't catch it in the images, but it must have been an effort to try and get their man Bevan back involved. There's going to be an attack train on the front end of this pack. They know what's happening here amongst this group. Beast Mode do not want James Bevan back in this group. How did Bevan get dropped is going to be the question, because that is their danger man for the final climb. Bevan is out of the situation here. Does this open up the door for Beast Mode for the final climb? Fastest across the segment, and as well as first across the line, is a huge amount of points. So far from what we've seen from the sprints, obviously these have not updated from the latest sprint, but the reality is that Bevan was the man it looked like that was going to be taken maybe both the fastest first across the line as well as the segment. Now that's put out, that's not going to be in the picture any longer. Beast Mode perhaps able to do something similar in just a few moments here to what we've seen with Deepak across Monument Avenue.
Well, I took him sitting at the back as a show of power. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe that heart rate, rather than just being high like we've seen in the past, was actually indicative of being in the box a little bit, because it is not working out very well for James Bevan at all at this stage, and Deepak have taken a real hit for that too. Again, we know that on his best day, he is absolutely a danger man. We all have good and bad days, so it's disappointing for him that by this point in the season, when it is a day that suits him more than these other climbing courses, that it hasn't coincided for him. But Deepak, they've got a few options, but I do think this presents an opportunity for Beast Mode, definitely, because maybe that will be just a little bit rattling for Deepak. If Bevan was in their final plan, then they will have to regroup and figure this out. Maybe Bevan said to them at the beginning, guys, I'll see what I can do, but I'm not sure I'm on a good one. And they planned around that. We're just kind of guessing at this point. Of course, they're the secrets that nobody gives away until the end, right? Otherwise, that could completely change the dynamic of it. But from the outside looking in, Beast Mode are in plum position. They're starting to move forward a lot here too.
There's no points on this that I'm aware of. Did they read the... I'm just going to double check. Maybe I got it wrong. but I don't believe there's any points up for grabs here.
Is this the 5th sprint, maybe?
Because I mean, they just came through a completely different section of course, and I do not believe that, no points on Broad Street. So
no, that's what we had in our notes, isn't it? No points there.
So beast mode going for something here, maybe just kind of putting a wrench in the middle of everything, kind of freaking everybody out. Like, well, no one was going to go for that. What happened? And then they went for something. Now they're all on the front here, calming down. But interesting to see here.
Curious one.
It is a curious one. Rusty Devlin saying fools.
Oh,
shots fired out here today.
Yeah, throwing it down. There is a lot of game detail that you need to be all over, and it can be a bit difficult, I think, when the blood is not rushing to the brain so much, but definitely more in the legs. But that was a bit of a mistake from them. If they had have kept going with it, I would have said, oh, that's a very savvy place to attack, but I don't think that's what's happened.
A little bit of a gap here, Kate. Look at this. This is dangerous gap, actually. You let something like this go. That is over 5 meters at this point. 20 meters going very quickly here. Who is back here? We do have a DPAC rider. I mean, it looks like it's going to come back. Not easily, though. Somebody's got to put out some serious numbers in just a moment. It's right on the edge here. It's gone out to a second now. Going to have to see some orange number kick very quickly here. I'm not sure these riders are recognizing how quickly this can get away from them.
If they get back on, this speed is not going to drop. It's around the 70k an hour mark. They're around the 300 watts. They are only going to wind it up and crank it up from here. So even if they do bridge, just jump back across, and I think they will be able to. Campagnoni, look at that, Nathan. The sprinter from DPAC is now having to go to the front and pull out of danger of not getting back on, and Pacheco. So this is not a great spot for DPAC, and perhaps, maybe beast mode, the laugh
they can get something out of it. Yeah, they can get a little bit of something out of this. This little bump here will give there's a little bump that's like 3% or so. It may give the opportunity if things calm down toward the front, because there is a reality that in just a moment, everyone's going to start looking at each other, thinking about the final climb. It is only 1 second. So this little bump may give that opportunity for the riders to give that extra kick, close it down pretty quickly. But that's a match burned only about 2K from the line. I mean, that is not the timing you want to have a high heart rate.
But it's still 1 second. So it's only 1 second, but it still remains at 1 second. And it's Campagnoni that is having to chase. And Devlin, I think he says fool me. He was the one that threw the smackdown, wasn't he? Call them fools.
Yeah. Now Magnoli goes across. Laughing. He might be the only one that comes across, actually. Pacheco now coming across as well, putting everybody else into the red ZWC.
Nearly 190, Nathan, to get across. That is not a small fry, considering they're about to hit the bottom of that climb, and it's all up and all high powers from there. That was a really big effort. That was possibly one of the most defining sections of the entire race, and we're not even sure if it was all together on purpose or not.
In ZWC, heading to the front, I think that they saw a little bit of a chink in the armor there. I saw a lot of red and black toward the front end of the group just a moment ago. They may have been communicating saying, hey, we've got the other teams in trouble a little bit. DPAC's off the back. We see a little bit of an opportunity here. Go to the front, make it fast, keep the heart rates high, because Mikami's only 164 here at this point. And I think they may be looking to try and take a win out here today, if ZWC might be thinking about this final climb more than anything else.
There's a quiet genius in attacking for a sprint that's not a sprint, and everybody thinking that you stuffed up, but actually it's a secret plan to dominate. I don't mind it. It's sneaky, but it could be genius.
Now, this is I was expecting to see a 50-plus, group here at this point, but we're looking at about 30 some riders. It's really been whittled down. This was not expected at all. I thought it was just going to roll to the line. Things have been very difficult out here today. Nobody could just sit unattentive and just stroll into this line. That's for sure. We're about to head into this final K here now. Beast Mode versus DPAC has been the conversation, but we may have an upset here coming from WEZ. Cryogen B, watch out for them. Z Sun as well as ZWC as we head into the final kilometer right now.
And this is where it starts to get interesting. There are some riders that put out some big power numbers. Everybody will have done their homework. They will have known who they are. They cross into that KOM territory now. This is where it's a bit of a drag out. Nathan, it doesn't start in earnest until they hit those cobbles. This is where it's a little bit about positioning and posturing. A little bit of cat and mouse goes on. A lot of power-ups being dropped early on. I feel like it's perhaps a little bit early, and they may want to save those for those steeper sections. But maybe it's a survival tactic as well. Jones from DPAC at the front there. He is chasing the wheel. They hit the cobbles. This is where it's game on.
And here we go now, WTRL to the front. Barry now 11 watts per kilogram very early. And as you said there, Kate, those early power-ups, definitely just a hang-on tactic most likely from riders that are not sure they're going to make it all the way to the line. Those who are saving for the final moments here are going to be the ones to watch out. And it's going to be Diavola here, already threw down the power-up. He's going to hang on right to the line. CWC with Matsuki, but no! Diavola comes across the line, first place. DPAC take it down. That's going to be fastest across the line as well as first across the line amongst them. Simon Green coming through a little bit later here. We'll see if we can get a replay in for everybody here to see how that ended up playing out for the riders. What a kick to the line there coming from Diavola. We talked about him a little bit earlier. Very, very strong rider. I've seen, one thing I do want to say about Diavola, I've seen him a lot in the recent weeks in the KISS 100 races, as well as a lot of the endurance races, coming to the line with top 5s, top 10s. So it looks to be paying off for him, all the training here out on Zwift.
We knew they had a lot of options, and they certainly executed that really perfectly. The number of riders from DPAC who got significant points should not be overlooked. That was pretty solid tactic from them, definitely. Now look at the replay here. It looks like Green hits out early, but it's a little bit too early when some of those power-ups start getting dropped. When Diavola moves,
12 watt per kilogram kick.
That
kick there around the corner there too. Very, very solid kick. Looks like he saved perfectly to the line there, Kate. Like if we go backwards just a little bit, for those who are watching too, a lot of people watch this for a course recon too as well. And you saw, as you said, those early power-ups a waste really when it comes down to it. It's that last 15 seconds, these last two corners, it's where the race has been won almost across the board. That 10 to 12 watts per kilogram from Diavola, that's what won the race for him there. We do see across the line here though, it's going to be Matsuki just hanging on with Cryogen. Look, where's Beast Mode? Nowhere to be seen, actually, Kate.
Nowhere to be seen. No, we said at the beginning of the day that this has happened a few times, Nathan, where at the beginning of the race, it's been all about Beast Mode, and then by the end, DPAC really muscle over the top. Bit of a different dynamic today with two very different, clearly different strategies around gaining points. But again, at the finish, there's no orange jerseys. That really surprises me. I think that they've got a lot more in the tank that they just haven't yet been able to really turn into the results they're looking for. And we know that they do because they are second overall on the table and not far behind DPAC. So they're still getting the points, but it is quite a different picture. We're watching Monster Truck, talking about good names.
Truck.
Over here in B. Woo! He is monstering up this thing. That was a really good timed.
I wish I had some zingers from like a Monster Truck Arena, like car jumping. I just don't know their language.
Oh, that's such an American thing. I don't know if we do that here.
Now the power up last two corners, as we saw, Evans is going to be the man here. It looks like here. Blowfly is coming on through at 8.1 watts per kilogram, 192 beats per minute. The suffering is on. Here comes Weatherall here across the line, taking down Monster Truck. He's got to hold on. He's going to do so. 10 watts per kilogram here coming on from Tune Bike Works. That's the B category. Finishing across the line. We'll start getting some results in and some points here in just a moment. Monster Truck early on, but we've seen again why you do not